I'm Dale Arson. I'm the operations manager of Arson Fire Consultants. We're working with the Lee County Arson Task Force here in Lee County, Florida, and we've set up vehicle test burns for them for their state and local investigators. This helps the investigators to determine when we have an arson fire to a vehicle, and we set these fires in 6 different ways so the investigators could come out here and try to determine how we did it, interview the possible suspect, and then to make their determination on making an arrest if possible. So we are glad to assist the Lee County Fire Arson Task Force in teaching their investigators on how to do a proper arson investigation to a vehicle. How we did this car fire is we got a marine flare, and basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to show a dash fire in a vehicle. And what arsonists will do is they'll light the road flare and they will put it in the glove box, and where the fire is coming out the flare, they move that towards the center of the dash, so the center of the dash will collapse, mimicking an electrical dash fire. And then we just close up the glove box and we let that burn. When the fire department comes in, we're hoping that there's hardly anything left of the road flare, or it'll be so encapsulated with the plastic that they won't recognize it. The only problem is that the sulfur from this will actually ooze out, and when it mixes with the fire department's water spray, it creates a paste, and the paste is like toothpaste, and we call it a sulfur paste. And when you pick it up and mix it and go in between your fingers with it, it feels like toothpaste, and people will be able to smell it, and the investigators, and know that a flare was used to start that fire.
The flare is lit and put in the glove box with the glove box closed. As the instructor mentioned, the burning part of the flare is facing towards the center of the dash. This burning effect will mimic electrical components burning, which very closely resemble an electrical fire. The extinguishment process is then closely monitored by the instructor. Once the fire has been extinguished, the instructor inspects the inside of the vehicle, looking for certain patterns that he wants the investigators to hopefully pick up on. Once the instructor is satisfied with the burn patterns that have been created, then he calls on the investigators to do a thorough inspection of the vehicle and report their findings to the instructor. As always, their findings are annotated in their fire journals to compare similar fires they may be exposed to in the future, and compare notes to make a determination on a cause and origin.
Out that window, I called 911. And the fire department just put the fire out. This is fuel injector cleaner that arsonists will use to help set an engine compartment fire. They'll say that they were using this and trying to clean out the engine, and for some reason it flashed on them and it caught the engine compartment on fire. So what we did is we stuck a rag in there too, right, to help it soak up some of the stuff to keep the fire going. Now most of that rag will burn up.
Once the accelerant has been carefully placed, the vehicle is then ignited and closely monitored. The hood is shut to simulate a realistic burning effect. Once the instructor is comfortable with the amount of burn pattern that has occurred, the fire is then extinguished. It is extinguished in the same manner as the fire department would to simulate a more realistic extinguishing technique. The students are then brought out, and the instructor begins a role-playing exercise with the students, in which the instructor assumes the role of the owner of the vehicle and gives his accounts of what happened and the events leading up to the fire. The students are then allowed to interview potential suspects, as well as conducting a thorough visual inspection of the vehicle. Once their findings are concluded, they report them to the instructor on what they think the cause and origin of the fire was, and whether it was intentional arson or a true accident. The instructor will then let the students know if they were correct in their findings or not, and then explain to the students how the fire was set and the methods used. The students then annotate these findings in their fire journals and compare them to similar fires they may encounter in the future to make a comparison for a determination of a cause and origin.
So this is just a regular cardboard box. I got a bunch of tons of paper product stuff in there. I put an old used cigarette in there, and I'm going to douse it with lighter fluid. We're going to set it on fire. I want this area to be going pretty well before we put it out. And what I'm going to say is that I was driving, I smoke, I flicked my cigarette out the window, and that we're going to say that it came back in and started the fire back here. And I finally had to find a way to pull out, you know, and I had to call the fire department and stuff. All right. I want to see if they find, I also put styrofoam in here to help it really get going. And I want to see if they find the cigarette butt in there and see if they believe my story.
An accelerant is used and carefully poured where the instructor wants the main body of the fire to be. The accelerant is then ignited in a specific pattern so that the story the instructor gives to the investigators is consistent with the burn patterns they will ultimately see when they conduct their investigation. The vehicle is then left to burn for a specific amount of time to where it is to the liking of the instructor and ultimately mimics previous burns the instructor has investigated. The vehicle is then carefully extinguished to not destroy any evidence that is left behind and possibly unburned. Finally, the instructors are brought out and allowed to interview potential suspects and witnesses.
What do you want to know? What happened?
Insurance?
I do have insurance, yeah.
What happened, sir?
Well, I was driving.
As with previous burns, the instructor conducts a role-playing exercise in which he pretends to be the owner of the vehicle, and the investigators take turns interviewing him to see if they can conclude a cause and origin of the vehicle fire.
And it must have started my back seat on fire.
Did you have groceries or anything in there, sir?
Well, I had a box that was full of papers and stuff. It had business papers in it and everything. I think I caught that box on fire because there ain't nothing left of that box. And so I pulled over as soon as I could, and I called 911, and the fire department came. But by the time they got here, I mean, I opened this door, and I don't know if it made it worse, but the fire was just rolling out this door when the fire department got here. I'm the only occupant. Yeah, don't scare me. Don't keep up behind me.
The investigators then report their findings to the instructor and are advised if they are correct or not with their final conclusion.
Because the rest of the papers weren't. The only part of the papers that are most significant damage is like literally in the chair.
Okay.
Seat.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, there's like a hole.
Okay. What would cause that?
Everything else is intact. That would be. That's where it's. I mean, it had to be an accelerant.